Well, if you guys haven't noticed, I haven't really done too many amphibian videos lately, and that's for two different reasons. Number one, I don't know nearly as much about amphibians, so I'm not quite as confident doing the informational ones. So when I do them, I have to make sure I really write down everything to make sure I have it correctly. And the other one is that I don't really have that many because, as referring to the first, I'm not as strong when it comes to the knowledge of them, and I don't know quite as much. And kind of the care is a little bit different than the norms that I have when it comes to taking care of mostly snakes. So even though all the snakes can be a little bit different depending on the species, amphibians are kind of like a whole different game, although it's still in the whole herpetoculture bubble. But we're going to change it up a little bit and do one on a fairly hardy amphibian species that we do have a couple of. And that is, this species spotlight is tiger salamanders. So, these guys are probably one of the most recognizable salamander species, with the exception of possibly the axolotl, because everyone kind of knows about the little feather fin, toothless, how to train your dragon little critters, right? So, and I think that's actually half of what they based him on anyway, was the axolotl and then like a big cat or something like that. But tiger salamanders, amazing little salamanders, great amphibians. So these guys are endemic to North America. They do go up into Canada. I don't know if they make it down into Mexico or not. I want to say they do, like the northern parts, but I could be entirely wrong. But I do know they cover all of North America and specifically all of the United States. They're most prominent kind of from like the New York-ish area. Maine gets a little cold for them, down even into Florida. And they're, like I said, they're mostly concentrated on the East Coast, but there are kind of pockets basically from coast to coast in the United States, including here in Colorado. So, that being said, these guys are great. They're one of the largest species in North America, specifically the United States. I think the other one is I think the Pacific giant salamander is the other one that's the contender, or one of the other different subspecies that may or may not have full species listings at this point, because taxonomy is hard. They are a type of salamander that's called a mole salamander, or I'm going to totally butcher this name, so I'm just going to throw it up right here, and it's pronounced ambistemodid. I think that's what it's called. Again, I apologize. I know that's not correct, and if anyone who does know that, please feel free to try to get the enunciation down in the comments below. But they are a group of salamanders that are called mole salamanders, which basically means that in their adult stage, they're almost entirely terrestrial, with the exception of basically just going back to reproduce and spawn. They're found in a bunch of different habitats, from deciduous and pine woodlands and a lot of heavy tree cover, even to kind of open grasslands, as long as there's some bit of water fairly nearby. But they will still spend the entire amount of their adult form outside of the water. Basically, all they really need is just kind of loose soil for them to kind of bury under and get away from direct light and predators. That being said, they do return to water, and they will travel very large distances to get back to essentially where their kind of spawn, their birth spawn, pond, pool, whatever it is. They will usually go back to the same one where they were born 4 generations. That's not always the case, but that is basically what these and many other salamanders and other amphibians in general do, and, birds and all of that other jazz. But so they spend all their adult lives on ground. They go back to the spawning point. Once they do get back to their birthing or spawning pools, the female lays their eggs, and the male will lay their spermatophore on top of them. They get fertilized, and after about 2 weeks, the eggs hatch. It's very fast because a lot of different things eat baby amphibian eggs, and then it takes about 3 months or so to fully mature. And during their larval stages, they're actually in their amphibious stage, which looks kind of like an axolotl. So, with those feathery gills, and they still have their full body with their head, feet, and legs once they develop those, and then they have the feather ones until they get to their mature adult phase. The difference is with essentially, so if anyone's ever heard of water dogs are essentially referring to the larval stage of tiger salamanders. Well, there's probably a couple other ones, but it's mostly tiger salamanders in areas where they stay in their larval stage a little bit longer and achieve larger sizes. And those get used for a lot of baits and things like that, for fishermen and things like that. And basically what they've kind of found is that the further north that they are, the longer they stay in their, kind of larval stage, those water dogs. So that's why usually kind of the further up in their range, and I say further up, we're thinking kind of Midwest, like Ohio, Illinois, Iowa, north of their range. They're usually in their larval stage longer, and the further south they get, they reach maturity, lose their gills, and crawl up on land a lot longer. The axolotls are a little different, where they stay their entire time in that axolotl state, in that larval stage for their entire lives, even through sexual maturity. But that being said, so if you're ever going to be keeping a tiger salamander in captivity, odds are it's probably from somewhere wild caught, so like these guys, but they can't be reintroduced because they've come in contact with other captive animals, and there's a possibility of essentially giving out or spreading disease or fungal that is highly contagious, such as chytrid or other fungal infections like that are highly contagious and decimating amphibian populations across the world. So they can't really be reintroduced back into the wild because they've come in contact with other ones. It would be very irresponsible to do so. So if you do end up having a tiger salamander, wherever you're keeping them, here are a few tips. They're obviously going to be the adult stage. So as I said before, they achieve, that kind of 6 to 8 inch range. They're very large, really kind of hardy salamanders. They eat a wide variety of insects, definitely insectivores, although they are cannibalistic and, opportunistic. So basically, if they think they can eat it, they will probably try. These guys are a little chunky. There's a fun little fact about salamanders in general, but specifically tiger salamanders. They kind of don't know when they're full. They will eat until there have been anecdotal stories of them bursting open because they are so full. And I'm trying to scale back on the amounts that they got fed because they are kind of chunky. So they're on diets, not the keto diet, but maybe a gluten-free vegan diet. No, they can't do vegan. Oh well, sorry guys. But that being said, they like cooler temps. So the reason why they're always underground, you don't see them too often unless it's kind of a cooler, overcast day if it rains and they come up, or in like gutter wells of windows. A lot of people find them in those places because it's cooler and it's out of the sun. Basically, over 80-ish degrees is when you kind of have to start worrying about them overheating, and that's where it gets a little bit dangerous. They like it cool. They like it humid, not necessarily damp, because damp leads to stagnation and fungal infections and things like that, but they do like it fairly moist. They like that loose substrate. So in this one, it's a mixture of topsoil, coconut, and peat moss, all kind of mixed up. And then in their little, under their little hides, there's some sphagnum moss too, which they do absolutely take advantage of. There's a couple rocks and some fake plant because I like to, have a little bit of just kind of something extra for them, even if they don't necessarily take advantage of it. As well as the fake plant kind of goes into their water dish that hopefully, like, if we throw in crickets or small dubia roaches and they get in there, they can figure it out. Although dubia roaches are pretty much goners once they get into water, honestly. They don't really spend a whole lot of time in the water. They are doing it right now because they always freak out whenever I handle them too much. And whenever I put them back, when we redo and toss up their substrate and redo their enclosure, one of them, usually the smaller, darker one, always ends up hitting right into the water. So that's why he's hanging out in there. But right now they're kind of kept in our basement. But as we are acquiring more snakes and the snake room is kind of spreading into the room where it's not been as warm, they're probably going to be moving up to the gecko room, which I do my utmost to maintain temps between like 73 and 81, because it's better for the Asian rat snakes and most of the gecko species in there, as well as a kind of constant humidity. So that way they're probably going to be moving into there, which will be a little bit more healthy for them. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Sorry that I don't do too many amphibian videos like this, but tiger salamanders are really cool, and I think they're amazing amphibian species. And I can't remember if I did these on the 5 beginner amphibian video or not, but they definitely are a very good beginner amphibian species if that's the route you want to go to over a lizard or a frog or something like that. If you want to get an amphibian tiger salamanders, very hardy, large enough size to be handled, and they can get habituated to handling. I don't handle them too much. Maybe that's because they're still amphibians. They still have fairly delicate, absorbent skin. So the more you handle them, it's not that great. So, still keep handling to a minimum because they're an amphibian, but they're more tolerant of than a lot of other species to begin with. But once again, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions, comments down below. Always try to be nice, play, positive, all of that when it comes to critiques, because I absolutely mess up too, just like everybody else. Please check out our podcast, Keep Comments Just a Snake Podcast. Email me if you have any questions about merchandise, video tours, educational videos, or anything like that at jzsreptiles@gmail.com, jzsreptiles@gmail.com. Please support US Ark if you can. If you love keeping reptiles, if you love animals, or if you have someone in your life that does like those things, please check them out. We're kind of struggling right now in America, so it could be really helpful if you guys check them out. They're doing the best for us, fighting for rights to keep those animals. And you're probably going to hear me say that a lot in most of the videos, kind of henceforth. Maybe not every single one, but you're going to hear me a lot. So I apologize if I get a little repetitive with that, but it's very important and people really need to know. But hopefully you enjoyed the video again. Sorry for repeating myself. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll catch you next time.